question to like older people. What did you do before you could look something?
Okay, first, older people? I prefer village elders or maybe wizened ones. I don't know, we can workshop it, but not older people. But okay, taking your question at face value, there are different answers for different scenarios. And I'm going to assume that this question is targeted at Gen X people. Because if you ask a boomer, I can tell you, as the generation that came right after the boomers, that the first thing you did was ask a boomer, and they would have one of two answers. One is they would make shit up, or two, they would say go play outside. Neither of which was very helpful. But that's how Gen X learned to be resourceful, and we actually found answers to these questions. So you've come to the right place. Let's take academic situations first. Let's say you had a report to write for your history class. Before the computers took over, we had the Encyclopedia Britannica. You would see commercials on TV during your cartoons that would tell you to get your parents to order the Encyclopedia Britannica, which they would deliver in installments because it was expensive. If your family had a whole set of encyclopedias, oh my gosh. And they were just books, A to Z. There would usually be 26 of them or so. And they would have all of the world's knowledge that was crystallized in whatever year it was written. There'd be several paragraphs on every animal, country, and they would be out of date pretty quickly. But that's what you had. And then as soon as the internet came along, we had Encarta, which was the revolutionary transition of the encyclopedia hard copies to the online encyclopedia, which was a major jump. You could just look it up on the computer. Hooray for that. Some people also went down to the library and did actual research, used the Dewey Decimal System. That's a whole thing. Let's not get into it. Those were the tryhards. Next up, let's talk about music, because this is where it gets fun. We didn't have Shazam. There was no way to look online and just look up all the artists and see all the albums they had. You basically had whatever they had at your local record store and whatever they were playing on the radio. So if you lived in a big city, you had access to a lot more music. If you lived in a small town, you had access to whatever they sold at Kmart or sometimes at Warehouse Records or, whatever record store they had in your town. So that sort of made learning new music like a treasure hunt. It was cool. There was a certain amount of oral tradition involved. We would share what we learned with each other. I remember I got really into REM a few years after their first album came out, and a buddy and I would go down to the record store and ask about their old albums and what they could order. And we got all excited when we learned that before their first album, Murmur, came out, they had an EP called Chronic Town that nobody had heard of in our town, and we were the first ones. And then one day I was at a gas station, and I saw a cassette of Chronic Town, and it was like finding buried treasure. And I got it, and I brought it home and showed it to my friend Will, and he just about lost his crap, and I was a local celebrity for about 20 minutes. That was what it was like, and it was cool. Other than that, we had MTV, or there was the radio, which was the Wild West. If you turned the radio on and it was 10 seconds into a song that you fell in love with, you had no way to know what the song was unless you just kept listening and hoped that the DJ would come back on and say which song it was. But that didn't always happen. Sometimes it went into a commercial, sometimes it went into another song, or you just had to get off the radio before you could find out what the song was. So you had a couple of options. One was to call the radio station and say, what was that song you played? And it might be 20, 30 minutes later, and they would say, which song? You were like, it'd be the one that goes, bah, bah, bah. And they would be like, I don't know, man. Here's the songs we played. And you'd have to get 5 songs and figure out which one was the one you heard. The song that I fell in love with, that I spent weeks trying to get to the bottom of, was called Beds Are Burning by Midnight Oil. It wasn't in heavy rotation, so I didn't play it very often, and I finally got it, and the song's been special to me ever since. But then there was also the thing where if you heard a song that you loved and it was in rotation, you could put a cassette tape into your boombox and you could wait for it to come on and you could record the radio onto your cassette tape. I had whole tapes, and lots of kids my age did, where we would record the radio when the songs we loved came on. So you would sit there sometimes late into the night and waiting for that song to come on the radio so you could hit record right when it came on. And that was fun. When it comes to movie knowledge, like, hey, who's that guy? What have I seen him in before? Or, wow, that lady looks so familiar. What was she in? Or who directed this movie and what else has he made? We had nothing like IMDb. I really believe that's why IMDb will probably always be my most opened and most used app. I think for a lot of people my age, that's never stopped being a really amazing, magical novelty, because there was no way to look that stuff up easily. Your sources of information were something like Premiere Magazine, which I subscribed to and devoured monthly because it had movie rumors of Steven Spielberg is circling a project about Burger or whatever. And then you had your local video store clerk. You relied on the people who worked in video stores. They were like the village wizards. they had all the information. And if you had a really good one, this wasn't like some lame minimum wage job. This was somebody who was passionate about film and could turn you on to stuff you hadn't seen before. That's how you learned about it. And it was pretty special. I used to call the video stores all the time. I remember Benny and June came out in 1992, and I wanted to see it so bad, and you couldn't stream it. And the only way to know if it was in store was to either go down there and find out that all the copies were currently checked out, or to call the video store. So they knew my name at the video store. And I would call, and they would say, no, Benny and June isn't in yet. Stop calling us. But they knew I was going to keep calling. How about TV? Do you love watching your favorite shows? Hope you're punctual. There was no DVR. There was no online guide until the mid-90s that told you what was going to be coming up. You had one resource for knowing what time shows came on, and that was TV Guide. TV Guide would tell you what was going to be on for the week. It would tell you what movies were going to be playing, and it had little codes that told you L for language, V for violence, SC for stuff you weren't allowed to watch. And that was it. And you had to memorize it, and you had to be on time, and you had to go to the bathroom before your show started. Good times. Would I go back there? Maybe. I mean, I love the ease with which you can get anything today. All your music is right there. If you hear about a band, you can play them 5 seconds later. If I want to know what movies are coming out, there's 5 different apps I have that tell me that. It's awesome. But there was something about having to go on the treasure hunt that made it more special, made it feel like it was all yours. And we don't really have any version of that today. I think that's why people get obsessed with opening Pokemon cards and things, because there's a part of us that loves the treasure hunt, and we want to do it somewhere. So I miss it. I really do. It was fun. Those were really the good old days. I guess I am an old person. Fuck. Anyway.